The light from some of these stars began its journey more than 110 million years ago. About the same time, the ancestor of one of our oldest mammals appeared on Earth. It survived the age of the dinosaurs and is still with us today. It's called the Echidna. Two Echidna researchers are unravelling the secrets of the echidna's survival.
When we're working around Pelican Lagoon, we often see a little echidna named Spike. And he got his name because he's very prickly and very active. And he lets us get up very close to him and observe him without being disturbed. Now, all echidnas have very distinct personalities, and his shows up in his curiosity.
Spike spends most of his time on land, but he can swim quite easily.
We've come to small streams, and the echidna will just enter the stream, swim across, and of course if you track across yourself, find the animal, that's about the time he'll look and say, uh-oh, somebody's behind me, and he'll get back into the stream and swim across again.
Yeah, we often see echidnas along the beach on Kangaroo Island. Sometimes they're down foraging in the seaweed. Sometimes they'll get in the water itself. An echidna doesn't sweat and it doesn't pant. So when it needs to cool off, best place is in the water.
Spike lives on Kangaroo Island, off the coast of South Australia. The island was cut off from the mainland by rising sea levels after the last ice age 10,000 years ago. Its isolation slowed the pace of human development and preserved much of the original vegetation.
Kangaroo Island is a haven, I think, for a biologist, and so it's a perfect habitat for echidnas, and of course a perfect place actually to do a long-term study.
Two field biologists, Dr. Peggy Rissmiller and Mike McKelvey, originally from America, were attracted to Australia by the wildlife and now make Kangaroo Island their home.
Yeah, well, I think you heard us coming.
Yeah. I think it's about time we change that transmitter.
Digging in pretty well.
Oh, he sure is. Just a second, I think I've got him. Oh, he's very strong. I've always grown up loving nature, wanting to be in nature, be part of nature. And I guess I was lucky enough to somehow find the pathway of becoming a scientist.
Peggy's study looks at echidnas in the wild. Over 60 individuals are tagged and 30 are fitted with radio transmitters, which helps them keep track of the elusive echidnas. Their observations are creating a better understanding of echidna behaviour. Although its distribution is spread right across Australia, from desert to rainforest, no one knows whether it's thriving or just surviving.
Off you go, Terry. It's been a very dry autumn, so the echidna's food sources have actually gone very deep into the ground. Now, echidnas won't waste a lot of time or energy digging around when there's nothing to be found, so they actually respond to this environmental change by going into a state of suspended animation that we call torpor. The animals actually lower their body temperature, and I can measure that with a transmitter. They also lower their breathing, and they can save a lot of energy. This adaptation probably helped them survive for so long. Even when they're active, They have a lower body temperature than any other mammal in the world. If our body temperature was that low, we'd be dead.
Spike stays active. His excellent senses of hearing, smell and sight help him hide from predators at the slightest hint of danger. They also help him locate food. He enjoys termites, but his diet of invertebrates varies widely over the year. The nickname spiny anteater doesn't really do him justice. It's now July, midwinter in Australia. It's the echidna mating season, the only time these solitary animals get together. Peggy and Mike go out every day to try and find them.
Pretty active here today.
They find the first echidna train of the season. Up to 10 males follow a female until she's ready to mate. Kid, Hari and Cece surround the female, Onion. The train may break up and reform many times. Hari wanders off, but he might return or join other trains during the month-long courting period. The next day, Peggy and Mike find a female, Billy, with Casey and Eagle. Casey sniffs around her. Eagle stands and smells her footprints. A gland on her back foot is the most likely source of the scent that attracts him. Casey tries to get his tail under Billy's. If she's ready to mate, he'll stroke her spines with his foot until they move in rhythmic waves.
It took years of fieldwork and observations before we actually observed the first mating of echidnas in the wild, but it's never been filmed before. It really was a bit disappointing when Billy left the mating rut, because I was hoping that we could capture it for the first time.
Quite often we take a video camera along just to help record what we're seeing, because you run into a lot of things that might not be so believable unless you had the pictures to prove it. One day I was out following Fluke, female, and found her in a mallee stump with two other animals, Kiko and Cannon. Now Kiko was climbing around on the mallee stump, and he was using not only his feet, but he's using his spines to hang on, and he was pushing in towards the other animals. He was pushing rocks out of the way, and eventually he just pushed Fluke right out of the pile and into the scrub, and he followed her away. And there was old Cannon just left behind, wondering what had happened.
It was a bit disappointing when we didn't see Casey and Billy mating, but it was just 2 weeks later when I was out in the bush, I found Onion, a very young female, together with Hari, and they were joined together in mating. They must have been together for about half an hour, because as I watched, I saw Hari slowly separate from Onion and just saunter off into the bush. Because of their solitary lifestyle, they may never see each other again, unless they meet in one of the later breeding seasons.
Echidnas are generally thought to be nocturnal, but during the cooler winter temperatures, the Kangaroo Island echidnas remain active throughout the day. They forage in many different habitats, often walking several kilometres. Using his beak, Spike can break open soft insects and lap them up with his long, sticky tongue. Echidnas don't have teeth. They use their tongue to crush their food. A currawong sees a young goanna who lives inside a termite mound. The smell of termites wafts out through the entrance and attracts Spike's attention. Last summer, a female goanna dug into the termite mound and laid her eggs. The constant warmth incubates the eggs until the goannas hatch to a well-stocked larder of termites. Since goannas are one of the few natural predators of echidnas, it's ironic that Spike's a real threat to the hatchlings. His spines could accidentally spear them. Their first instinct is to escape, but it'll be a race against time with the currawongs. It's late in winter. Peggy and Mike search the reeds near the beach to find Pip. She attracted a mating train a few weeks ago, and they want to check her pouch. They're looking not for a newborn echidna, but for an egg, because these remarkable creatures are egg-laying mammals. They're known as monotremes, and there are only two others, the platypus and the long-beaked echidna that lives in New Guinea. Egg-laying is one of the intriguing behaviours that attracted Peggy and Mike to do a long-term study. They believe it may be a secret to the echidna's survival.
Oh, it looks like she's already got a pretty good pouch. No, there's no egg there yet.
No egg.
No,
okay.
We'll check her in a couple days.
Since echidna's discovery by scientists more than 200 years ago, some of the mysteries of their reproduction have remained unsolved. How does the egg get into the pouch? It's one of many questions Peggy is answering in her study.
We now know that the female will curl up to lay her egg into the pouch. We've seen echidnas in this position quite often, curled up with their tail close to their body. and in that way they have easy access to the pouch. An echidna only has one external opening, called the cloaca, that's used both for excretion and reproduction. And it's in this curled up position that the female can actually extend the cloaca and deposit her single egg directly into the pouch opening.
Winter is the breeding time for lots of creatures on Kangaroo Island, like the black swan. There's an abundance of food that continues through spring and helps ensure the survival of young. The Cape Barren goose was on the edge of extinction. Favourable conditions on Kangaroo Island have given it a chance to survive. Peggy and Mike return to the beach reeds to try to find Pip. They want to check her pouch again.
Right, it's day 23 now. She didn't have an egg 2 days ago, so let's check her today.
All right.
Pretty strong.
Coming back strong. All right.
Just
You
carefully
got
open
her?
the pouch.
You got
Hey,
it.
there's one there.
You got an egg.
Right.
Well, okay.
Think you get
well,
some
here-
pictures?
Yeah, just let her back onto your hand a minute. You got it?
Yep.
Okay, let me get the camera ready.
I'm always excited. It's so exciting. I don't know if it's like motherhood, but
Can you see it? I need your hand. Okay, your
Okay.
hand's at it. There we go. I got the egg. Okay.
very good. This tiny little puggle that doesn't even have a teat to attach to in the mother's pouch actually has to hold on to the hairs upside down and backwards, pull itself up from the bottom of the pouch about 6 times its own body length up to the milk patch area and suckle for the first time. And when you see it, it's just nothing, smaller than a jelly bean. And you can see the milk in the stomach. It's totally translucent. And you know that in 6 months' time it's going to be covered with spines and look like an echidna.
In early spring, cold winds blow off the Southern Ocean. Peggy and Mike check the pouch of their biggest echidna, Big Mama. They find a week-old young one called a puggle and name her Champagne. Champagne may be the only young her mother produces for several winters. She might live to be 50 years old. She eats invertebrates, which are a stable food source. She won't be aggressive or territorial. As an adult, she'll have few predators and good defences, but as a young puggle, she's vulnerable. The puggles grow rapidly. This is Champagne at 2 weeks. At 5 weeks, she's a real handful for Peggy.
I feel very, very special, very honoured to know an echidna from the time practically that it was conceived. And some of these animals I've been following for 4 years now. I want to find out when they become sexually mature, and it will be my biggest thrill when my first baby girl has her own puggle.
The island's like a window in the past for a biologist. We don't have the pests, the introduced rabbits, the foxes. Our vegetation is like the island vegetation was when the explorers discovered it. The Tammar wallaby is a very small marsupial we have here. He was the first of the marsupials to be discovered by the early explorers. Today, he's disappeared from much of his mainland range. But here on Kangaroo Island, we have this tremendous diversity, and we have life going on like it has for a very, very long time. It's still intact, and it's all intertwined.
By the time she's 8 weeks old, Champagne no longer fits inside Big Mama's pouch. She just hangs on underneath. Peggy's fascinated.
In one way or another, I have a feeling that echidnas will probably always be part of my life. When an echidna looks you in the face, it's like, I want to know more. And because I wanted to know more, I threw myself basically into it. And I'm here now. And I'll be here for a long time, I think.
This is a dangerous time for Puggles. If Champagne loses her grip, Big Mama would have no way of picking her up. It would mean certain death by these meat ants. At this stage, Big Mama forages up to 18 hours a day, and her Puggle's too large to carry. She digs a nursery burrow for Champagne. She'll return to feed her only once every 5 days. Four months later, and it's midsummer, a time of heat and drought. Perfect for large, hungry goannas. Fortunately for Champagne, her spines are now long enough to protect her. She's ready to leave the burrow, independent from Big Mama. Spike's out foraging, when suddenly he smells and hears something new.
The echidna has been able to cope and adapt to over 110 million years of environmental changes, such as the Ice Age and the atmospheric conditions that probably wiped out the dinosaurs. We've only known the echidna for 200 years. There are still many, many survival strategies that we don't understand about the echidna. Yet I believe, given habitat and given a chance, the echidna can survive.
The first Europeans who settled along the rivers of eastern Australia about 200 years ago noticed many beaver-like animals in the open pools of water. People had never seen anything like them before. Were they mammals, birds, or reptiles? The first skins sent to London aroused great suspicion and were regarded as fakes by many scientists of the day. But after many years of doubt and argument, the question was finally settled in 1884. The platypus and 2 other animals were placed in a special group of mammals because they all laid eggs. Scientists today classify the world of mammals into 3 main orders or groups, based on the method of reproduction. The largest and most successful group includes nearly all living mammals. They're called placentals because they nurture the fetus in the womb by means of a placenta. In this group, we find animals like cats, dogs, seals, giraffes, elephants, beavers, and humans. All these animals have hair on their bodies, are warm-blooded, and feed their young on milk. A smaller group of mammals are the marsupials. Here we find kangaroos, koalas, wombats, and possums. They also have hair on their bodies, are warm-blooded, and feed their young on milk, but the young of marsupials are born at a very early stage of development before climbing into a pouch on the female's body. The third group of mammals is a very small one, just 3 species. These are the monotremes, the egg-laying mammals. Here we find the platypus and 2 species of echidna, also called spiny anteaters. They are very different from all other mammals because they lay eggs. But they still have hair on their bodies, still feed their young on milk, and they're also warm-blooded. Although monotremes lay eggs like reptiles, they shouldn't be thought of as representing an early stage in mammal evolution. For we now know that the 3 groups of mammals all developed separately from the same ancestors, starting about 200 million years ago. All 3 groups evolved quite independently, although they do have many things in common. We still don't know a lot about the very early mammals, and there are several theories on how each of the 3 groups developed, particularly the monotremes. First, let's look at the Echidna family. This is the short-beaked echidna, or spiny anteater. It's fairly common and found all over the Australian mainland. It has hair over most of its body, as well as many long, sharp spines. The spines are not poisonous, but they are very sharp. There are no spines on the underside, and the hair is a lot thinner. The word monotreme means 1 hole and refers to the single opening used for both reproduction and excretion of body wastes. While this is an accurate description of these egg-laying mammals, it's not exclusive, for marsupials also have only 1 opening. The short, powerful legs and pointed snout are specially adapted for digging into the nests of ants. their main source of food. Here's a slow-motion film of an echidna picking up white ants from a dish. See how the ants stick to the tongue. Echidnas seem to swim quite well. This could be useful in a climate where there are sometimes floods. There's no doubt that echidnas look a little bit like hedgehogs and porcupines, but they're not closely related to either of those animals in any way. Hedgehogs and porcupines are both placental mammals. Although they are warm-blooded, echidnas, like all the egg-laying mammals, have a body temperature that is a little bit lower than the placental mammals and marsupials. These differences, however, don't seem to affect their ability to survive and reproduce. This is all the more amazing because each female echidna produces only one egg each year, and the survival rate must be very high for echidnas to be so widespread and so successful. Mating takes place in July and August. About 2 weeks later, the female lays one egg. This is placed into a simple pouch on the underside of its body. Nobody yet knows how. The egg is soft-shelled, about the size of a thumbnail. And after about 10 days, the young echidna inside the egg uses a sharp tooth to cut through the rubbery shell. You can see how very small the young echidna is at this stage. Inside the pouch, the young finds one of the milk patches to feed itself. There's a mammary gland on each side of the pouch, but no nipples. The milk comes through several pores in the skin. You can see the milk inside this baby echidna. The female echidna carries the young around with her for the next 2 months as she forages for ants and termites. The young echidna here is about 1 month old and hangs on firmly to the underside of the female. It still feeds on milk supplied by its mother. Later on, the female leaves the young in a den or burrow, for by now the young has started to grow short spines and will be too large and prickly to carry about. This young echidna is about 2.5 months old. At 4 months, its spines are beginning to show quite clearly. Notice the powerful feet and claws. Not until it's nearly 1 year old will the young leave its mother to lead a life of its own. The short-beaked echidna has a very wide distribution in Australia. You can find them in the tall forests of the coastal areas, as well as in the deserts of the inland. They also occur in some parts of Papua New Guinea. The other echidna in the group of egg-laying mammals is the long-beaked echidna. This animal is found only in the humid mountain forests of Papua New Guinea and West Irian. The long-beaked echidna lives mainly on earthworms, which it finds by searching through the forest litter. In fact, very little is known about this rare egg-laying mammal. It's much larger than its Australian relative, with more fur on its body and only a few short spines. There are fossil remains of similar large echidnas in Australia, and also fossil remains of a giant long-beaked echidna that became extinct about 20,000 years ago. The giant echidna was about 3 times the size of this present-day animal. Now the platypus. The platypus is probably the best known of all the egg-laying mammals, amazingly specialized for life in the water. It's not a very large animal, about half the size of a domestic cat. It has a covering of very dense waterproof fur, which traps a layer of air next to the skin. Both front and back feet are webbed, although it uses only the front legs as paddles. Each rear ankle of the male platypus carries a small venomous spur, probably used in territorial disputes with other male platypuses. In captivity, they've been known to kill each other with poison from these spurs. Here the tail is being held up to show the spur on each hind leg. At one time, these animals were hunted for their fur, but now they're totally protected. The muzzle, or bill of the platypus, looks a bit like that of a duck, but unlike a duck's bill, it is soft and rubbery. The nostrils are near the tip. They have no teeth, only hard grinding pads for chewing up their food. On land, the platypus curls up the front webbed feet to walk on its knuckles. This slow-motion film shows how the short legs that come out of the side of its body give the platypus a kind of rolling action when it moves on land. But its real home is in the water. The platypus usually lives and breeds in rivers where there are open pools of deep water. Platypuses can be found in most of the creeks and rivers that flow from the Great Dividing Range in eastern Australia. High rainfall and melting snow in spring send torrents of water into many river systems. In most of these places, the platypus is fairly common, but sometimes difficult to see in the dark, swirling water. Underwater, they search among the stones and rocks for freshwater shrimps, insect larvae, and fish eggs. The soft rubbery muzzle is crammed with very sensitive nerve endings. When it's underwater, the platypus usually closes its eyes and relies mostly on the sense of touch in its muzzle. As platypuses often feed in water that's not very clear, or at night when it's dark, it's easy to understand why they don't rely on vision to find their way about, or when they hunt for food. They return to the surface after each dive to breathe air. They can stay underwater for as long as 3 minutes, but usually each dive lasts only about 1 minute. The white patches that you can see are actually areas of light-colored fur below the groove which contains the eyes and ears. This groove closes when the platypus dives. The platypus uses only its front legs for swimming. The back legs act as rudders, and the tail is used as a kind of balance. The front legs are more fully webbed than the back legs. When they're searching for food, they swing their heads from side to side. It's been suggested that they can sense the movement of water reflected from objects around them. They don't usually need to touch an object to know that it's there. When it's not in the water feeding, the platypus spends its time in a short burrow dug in the riverbank. In spring, male and female platypuses come together for breeding. Mating probably takes place in the water, but it's never been observed. At this time, the female digs a nesting burrow into the riverbank, usually about 10 meters or 30 feet long. The entrance to the nesting burrow is always above water level and usually well hidden among grass, tree roots, or stones. There are many twists and turns in this burrow, and sometimes more than one entrance. The female platypus will also block off the passageway at a number of places while she's inside. Here, on a platform of leaves and grass, the female will incubate the 2 creamy-colored eggs. Each egg is about the size of a thumbnail. The female holds the eggs close to her body, the tail curled around her head. We don't yet know how long it takes for the very small eggs to hatch, but it's probably about 10 days. When they hatch, each young platypus is less than a centimeter long, but starts to grow very quickly. At 3 days old, it has almost doubled in size and starts to suck milk from its mother. The female can now leave the young in the nest burrow for short periods in the morning and evening while she looks for food in the river nearby. There may be several well-hidden nesting burrows along any stretch of river with open pools of water. The female has to block and unblock the burrow every time she leaves it or returns. So that they can cope with the depleted air in their burrow system, platypuses have evolved rather special blood with a very large number of oxygen-carrying cells. This type of blood may also be useful for extended underwater dives. The milk glands on the female platypus lie along each side of the body. There are no nipples. The milk comes out from large pores on the skin surface. Now the young platypus is 7 days old. It's nearly 4 centimeters long, or about 1.5 inches, and growing quickly. At 6 weeks, it's about 12 centimeters long, nearly 5 inches, but still blind and without fur. It's now about 2 months old, and the fur has started to grow. Its eyes won't open for about another week or 2, but even at this age, it's not very large. The young platypus first leaves the burrow when it's about 3.5 months old. At this stage, it's not as large as its parents, but soon begins to catch food on the river bottom. Most of the time, platypuses eat insect larvae and worms, but sometimes they manage to catch small freshwater shrimps. There's no doubt that the platypus is really a very successful egg-laying mammal. It has developed special skills to survive in a particular environment. And so have the echidnas we looked at earlier. These egg-laying mammals have survived because each has been able to exploit the environment in which it lives. And we shouldn't think about them as relics of the past, but rather as mammals which have evolved along different lines very successfully.